Welcome into Straight to the Chase here on the Fantasy Baseball Advice Network in conjunction with Fantasy Sports Advice Network. Hey, coming to you from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar, I am your host, Chase Thornton. Now, you might know me from my Operation Domination podcast Wednesday nights on the Fantasy Football Advice Network, but here we are all about baseball, fantasy baseball to be exact. And this episode is kind of our ceremonial first pitch, right? It's the debut show here on Fantasy Baseball Advice Network. And what better way to throw out our first pitch than by talking about fantasy pitchers? Specifically, we're talking about fantasy pitchers who, for one reason or another, are due to see big increases in their inning counts this season. Now, to me, it doesn't matter if you're talking head-to-head points leagues, roto and categories, whatever. More innings for your starters means more bites of the apple, right? More opportunities to score you fantasy points or rack up those stats that you need. More opportunities for strikeouts, more opportunities for wins. If you are in a points league, like me, as I am in my home league, more innings equals more points almost by default, right? My league gives pitchers a point per out. So a basic inning is 3 points right off the bat, and strikeouts add to that. So if you can find a high innings guy with a reasonable whip and a K per 9 rate over 9, I mean, you're golden. That's the target prototype, right? So, last season, I'm doing my research before the draft, that I really prioritized guys like Logan Webb, Logan Gilbert. And now, before you hit my comments, no, Logan was not just the strategy. I wasn't targeting Logan Allen and Logan Gillespie and Logan Paul and Logan's Run. The Logan thing was just a coincidence, okay? But what I was looking at were guys with big workloads, okay? Pitchers that were hopefully in starting rotations, early in the starting rotation, projected to have that consistently high innings count, and also then like a low walks per 9 rate, okay? So like I said, in a points league, with a point per out, a guy like that, you're basically starting with at least 15 points right off the bat, and you're going up from there with every strikeout and every out that he gets past the 5th inning. Okay, yes, hits and walks and runs, they all subtract from that, but for even just a solid pitcher, if he's got a high innings total, that's going to mitigate that damage more often than not, right? So before we get into it, I want to remind you, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you can always be informed of new content when it drops here. We're going to be seeing each other several times a week, every week here in the lead up to opening day. And, at the very least, I'll be here. So I will hope to see you each week too. And with that, let's crack one open and get started here. So if you followed me here from my fantasy football exploits on the interwebs here, you might know that I'm normally drinking either a handmade cocktail, something or dark and chewy, say a porter or a stout. We don't serve a lot of blue and silver cans here at the Mott and Bailey, but we're switching it up this week a little bit in honor of legendary Brewers announcer Bob Uecker. This past Sunday would have been his 91st birthday. As you may know, we lost him here earlier this month. So we're cracking Miller Lights here in his honor on the premiere episode here. So I just want to say rest in peace, Bob. Thanks for all the memories, and hey, enjoy the front row. So getting to the pitchers here, first up, we're going to bring up last year's National League Rookie of the Year, Mr. Paul Skenes. Now, the Pirates ace is currently going as the SP2 and the 14th overall player in drafts. So if you're slotted late in the first round of a standard size league, you've got a shot to either grab him with your first or maybe gamble a little bit and get him right after the turn. But either way, if you do get him, you're getting a stud. Okay. And remember, he wasn't promoted until mid-May last season. There was a little bit of controversy. Why haven't they just taken him from the get-go? And are they trying to manipulate his time? But when he made it up, he was lights freaking out. Okay. He put up phenomenal numbers, and he did it in only 23 starts last season. He ended up with only 133 innings overall. This year, now listen, expect him to go for 185 plus. When you consider he was third among starting pitchers in terms of fantasy points per inning last season, and he was actually the leader among guys who pitched more than just a couple of days, literally. I mean, you've got a season-defining player for you in your fantasy rotation there, okay? He sported an ERA at just 1.96. He held opponents to just a 1.93 batting average, and he had a K per 9 over 11.5. This man lived up to the hype. The mustache lived up to the hype. Paul David Skenes is the real deal, everybody. Oh, and by the way, if you hadn't paid attention, he's dating Livy Dunn. So, I mean, it's Paul's world. We're just living in it. And Someday he probably won't be pitching for the Pirates, but until then, my Brewers here have to deal with him, damn it. So cheers to that, I guess. But our next name here might have gotten a little lost in the shuffle in light of the Shohei Ohtani hype and the circus that was surrounding his new teammate that just signed, Roki Sasaki. But we're talking about Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Okay. Now he's your SP14 coming off the board at 53 overall. But Yamamoto was expected to be a real big part of that Dodgers rotation last season from the get-go. And then he got off to that disastrous start in the Korea League with the 5 earned runs in just 1 inning pitch, took the loss in his first start with his new team. And some lesser fantasy managers out there might have panicked a little bit. But when he got the ball back 9 days later, when they got back stateside and started the real regular season, he looked like ace material just about every time he took the mound for the rest of the year. But he's on our list today for a reason, and that reason last year was a triceps injury that originally was termed a rotator cuff strain, and then they said it was maybe a tricep injury soreness. There's some mystery surrounding that, but either way, the injury cost him 3 months last season, and it held him just to 18 starts and 90 innings pitched. Now, as I said, he did a lot with the innings he had. He went 7-2 with an ERA at an even 3. His whip was 1-1-1-1, straight ones across the board. He had a K per 9 at 10.5. Right now, he slots in as the Dodgers' probable number 2 starter to begin the season, at least. But if he could stay healthy with that Dodgers lineup behind him, he could really cook this season. I mean, maybe you could talk up that injury from last season to your league mates, try and coax him down the draft board a bit. But Yoshinobu Yamamoto, another guy with the stuff to anchor your rotation, and he can do it at a starting pitcher 2 type cost. And then moving on, I'm a little bit older than the average bear, or at least I kind of feel like it sometimes, but I come from a time when the Atlanta Braves dominated on the strength of their pitching staff, and it seemed like they were always able to find another guy to plug in and just keep rolling, right? And last season, Spencer Schwellenbach had that same kind of feel to him. I mean, at least to me. I don't know about you guys, but he was another guy who wasn't called up till the last week of May. But when he got up there, he was a mainstay in the rotation the rest of the year. He ended up getting the start 21 times last season after only 13 innings at AA. Never pitched at AAA. Only 13 innings at AA and started 21 times straight here in the pros. Finished with 123 and 2/3 innings. Was able to parlay that into an 8-7 record. His opponent batting average was 224. He had a whip of 1.043. Now, Spencer Schwellenbach's strikeout totals aren't really spectacular, but he's over 9.24 for a K per 9 rate. And I like to look at K per 9 over strikeout percentage. It's just the way I like to. It's the way that I process it better in my head. I talk about K per 9 instead of the percentage, but I mean he's over a strikeout per inning, right? So he's not killing you there. He just makes guys swing at his pitches. He gets outs. Thing is, he's probably the number 3 in this rotation at the worst until the other Spencer comes back. And I talk about Spencer Strider, who's probably never been the other Spencer in his life. But he averaged almost 6 full innings per start last year. I think this is going to be a friendly lineup behind him once Acuna makes it back. Schwelly's coming off the board as SP28. He's 92nd overall, so he's a solid number 3 starter who I think can put up number 2 type numbers in points leagues for sure for you. So you keep an eye on Schwellenbach there too. And with that, we're going to raise our drinks here and we're going to give a cheer for the next pitcher on our list in the Seattle Mariners, Brian Woo! All right, it's not that exciting, but calm down, everybody. He's everybody's favorite Cal Poly Mustang. He was very good when he was on the mound for Seattle last season, okay? But he was limited by some nagging injuries that kind of, limited him in some starts and put him on the IL actually for a couple of short stints. But like I said, the results were there when he was there, okay? If you weren't paying attention last season, and you should have been, Woo threw 121 and a third innings over only 22 starts last season, but he came away with a 9-3 record and a 2.89 ERA. here's the best part about him. He led all starting pitchers with over 100 innings in his walk rate, just 2.8%. And he held opponents to a 211 batting average. You add all of that up, he had a whip of just 0.898. That was actually lower than what Skenes had at 947. So, I mean, that's something to cheer about indeed, in my opinion. Woo is the real deal. He can pitch the baseball. Okay, but the questions with him here are kind of twofold. First, can he avoid those nagging injuries that cost him all those innings last season? You know, he's already the likely fifth starter at the moment in Seattle's, super deep rotation there. He'll get more than last year's 22 starts for sure, but he's not getting 30 starts. Okay, if he can stay healthy, he's going to get more than the 22, however. But the second question with him, he's got a K per 9 rate of 7.49. That's abysmal for a fantasy starter. That's a little bit of a bummer. But if he could somehow cultivate, say, a third pitch breaking ball, go along with that four-seamer and the sinker, and he throws those fastballs a lot. But if he could get that third pitch breaking ball to go along with that, his K numbers probably would come up. They'll likely regress at least to the mean a little bit, I would think. But as it is, he's probably still going to throw some version of a fastball 70% of the time like he has the last couple of years. And he's just going to know that contact on it isn't going to hurt him too bad usually. He just, he's good at what he does. He's a professional pitcher. It does make him probably, in my opinion, a little bit more valuable in points leagues. But you're getting him as the starting pitcher 42 at 141 overall. Brian Wu is a guy that I really have my eye on. I'm going to come away from a lot of fantasy drafts with Brian Wu. I am watching him closely every time that we start to get around that part of the draft there. Fun fact, I mentioned he went to Cal Polytech. The costumed Cal Poly Mustang mascot is named Musty, which is unfortunate. But the live mascot is a majestic, unsaddled, free-spirited equine named, you got it, Chase. So I think it's nice that living creature actually has a dignified name, but at least Musty can go home afterwards and he can take his foam head off and drown his sorrows in Polytech homework. So he's got that going for him, right? Cheers to that, Musty, but we prefer Chase around here. Now, I brought up Skenes earlier, and I brought up Woo's whip rate in comparison to him, but we want to talk about Skenes' teammate now. We're going to shift the spotlight a little bit. And this guy who had take kind of a back seat to the phenom, we're going to talk about Jared Jones here, who honestly was pitching at a possible rookie of the year pace himself early on in 2024 anyway. His draft ADP numbers, if you look right now on Fantasy Pros, his draft numbers are a little wonky. Looks like he's listed as starting pitcher 75, coming off the board at 250 overall. But when you break down the individual source numbers and where he's going in each individual platform, to me, he looks more around, say, like starting pitcher 43, coming off the board in the 140s. And that's at least more where I think he should be, and I think where he will be when all's said and done for you there. But 22 starts last season, 121 and 2/3 innings pitched. He had an overall K per 9 of 976, which wasn't shooting the moon, but I mean, it wasn't quite, woo numbers either. Woo, right? Still fun to say, but sorry. Anyway, his season was looking real good up until he had a lat strain that cost him almost all of July and August. Okay. And afterwards, he wasn't quite as effective when he came back. Only had one win after he came back. His innings per start were down too after that. Strikeout totals and his rates were still there. Like I said, they weren't great before, but at least he maintained them after he came back. So that's encouraging. Limited his walks really well for the first month of the season. If you were paying attention, I had him on my fantasy team. I was thrilled with it till he had to go on the IL, like I said. But that first month and a half of the season, he was really limiting the walks, but his command kind of dipped in late May, and his walk rate increased after that. But before the injury, he had a whip of 1.110. Okay. But after he came back, that jumped up to 1.435. So, he should be fully healthy to start the season. I think that's behind him. He should slot in as the number 3 in the rotation there behind Skenes and Mitch Keller. And the word last year and the word in the offseason here is that he's been working on a curveball as a third pitch. He was working on it like kind of late last season. That's something all the gurus out there have been wanting to see from him. They think that could increase his effectiveness. Right now, he relies just on 2 pitches, but if he can figure that curveball out there and use that, or even have that as just a threat in the back of guys' minds, that K per 9 rate might come up some too. It might, if he can sneak that over 10, I think he'd be a real fun ad. But Jared Jones, kind of the third wheel in that Pirate rotation. Everybody's obviously, for good reason, enamored with Skenes. Everybody likes Keller. Jared Jones is a guy that really helped me out last year when I had him on the roster when he was on the mound, especially early in the season there. But last guy we're going to talk about in this episode is going to be the perfect bridge to our next show. So next time out, you find me here on Fantasy Baseball Advice Network, straight to the chase. We're going to be talking about starting pitchers coming off injuries, major injuries that cost them either all or essentially all of last season. But, guys who definitely need to be on fantasy radars. But we're going to talk about Matthew Boyd right now. He's a newly minted Chicago Cub. He signed a 2-year deal with them, around $29 million off the top of my head, I believe. But he pitched less in 2024 than any other guy that we've talked about so far today. But he was actually really effective when he was out there for the Guardians, and he actually pitched meaningful innings for them all the way through the postseason. Boyd's coming off Tommy John surgery, and so he didn't even sign with Cleveland until June. But he hit the ground running for them in August, and when they finally called him up, he ended up with 39 2/3 innings across 8 starts. He was only 2-2, but he had an ERA at 2.72 and a WHIP of 1.134. His K9 rate was 10.4. Now, if you look at all those numbers and you compare them to his career averages, they all blow his career averages away, to be honest. I mean, he pitched very well compared to his averages, his career averages when he came back last season. But the numbers he did put up would look pretty nice with a full season's workload. Heck, even if he only got to the mid-20s for say, a number of starts. If he pitched as much this coming year with those same results as the other guys on this list, the Woos and Joneses, if he could get up there in 22, 23 starts even and stay healthy, those are nice numbers, and he's going to be effective for you when he's out there on the mound, especially if he can continue to limit the home run ball. That's been kind of a problem for him in his career. In fact, he led the American League, I believe it was, in home runs allowed in 2019, and I think even in COVID year 2020. So I mean, that's been a problem for him, keeping the ball in the yard, but he did a good job of limiting that last year when he came back, and he gave up 4 home runs in those 8 starts. So about 1 every other. But he's been really good when he's been on the mound. He was really good on the mound last year, but therein lies the rub, as we say in the land of English majors. Boyd hasn't carried a full season's workload since 2019. Again, various reasons, 2020, COVID year, whatever, but he hasn't topped 15 starts in a major league season since then. And he's had a litany of injuries, but he looks set to be the Cubs' number 4 starter. They did, like I said, they signed him to that 2-year deal. He should at least outlast those 8 starts from last year. He's going to have a lineup behind him that I think is going to score more than league average. It's, especially after they added Kyle Tucker. I love Kyle Tucker. I love him in fantasy. I love him on the real baseball field. And now he plays for the Cubs, and I got to temper that love. But, when Boyd gets drafted, anyway, bringing it back to Boyd here, he's coming off the board as a starting pitcher 98. He's 325th overall, 325th overall. So, I mean, he's basically free. If you want Matthew Boyd, you can have him. That's what everybody's telling you. And I'm here to tell you, I think you want him at that price. Okay. I really like taking him as one of your back end starters. You draft 8 or so, however many, depending on your roster sizes and however many guys you got to use. But I like taking him as one of my back end starters who I think is going to have upside, but a guy that I'm not going to feel like a lot of pressure to hang on to as the season progresses. If he doesn't quite live up to the tepid hype that I'm giving you all here, you don't have to, feel that pressure to hang on. Oh, geez, he might blow up. He might blow up. You don't have to feel like that about him. But if he maintains that success that he had last season, if he has figured it out a little bit here in terms of how to keep the ball in the yard, And if he pitches 20 or more games for the Cubs at the same level that he pitched for the Guardians last season, man, I mean, he would be a huge find at his current ADP there. So, I mean, there you got a couple of guys, like I said, just a list of guys that I think are going to have a lot more innings this season than last season. They're guys that scored a lot of points per inning, fantasy points per inning, if you're a points league guy. But also, like I said, if you're looking for starters, innings equal more stats. So you want those guys who are going to have higher innings. And these are some guys that I mean, Skenes is on everybody's radar, and he should be. But I'm here to tell you, it might even be better than it was last year because of the innings increase he's going to see starting a full season's worth of games and not just 23 games. Guys like Schwellenbach, these are guys that are going to get drafted. These back end guy here, Matthew Boyd, is a guy that you might be able to, sneak onto your roster, or not sneak onto your roster, but you might be able to sneak through some big points from him when you draft him and the other guys in your league don't. But that's going to do it for this episode of Straight to the Chase here. Again, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, et cetera, all of that, so you can keep up with the podcast. Head on over to fantasybaseballadvice.com. It's down there on the ticker. That's where you're going to find all my baseball content. Right now, we got an article up over there covering the guys we just talked about here. There'll be one on the injury guys from the next episode. There'll be plenty more on the way every week leading up and all the way through the regular baseball season. So get on over there, fantasybaseballadvice.com. Sign up for a membership. You're going to get access not just to the Fantasy Baseball Advice social forum, but fantasy football advice, fantasy basketball advice if you choose. You can friend me on there, which means you'll be able to ask questions, leave comments on the shows or the articles. You'll be able to interact with me, other fantasy players, other fantasy personalities. It's a veritable sports lovers paradise over there. Okay. So you're going to want to get over there, fantasybaseballadvice.com. Follow me on social media at STTChaseFFB, at STTChaseFFB. You can find me on any social media platform that I have there with that name. Otherwise, I mean, heck, search for me, Chase Thornton, on Untapped if you want to. We can talk about beer on there. But either way, I'm going to say thanks for watching, and we are going to say, hey, get up, get out of here, gone.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.